Hello, my name is Brian Mulamba. Welcome to this very special interview with Mr. Michael Chishala, who is going to be talking about ICT solutions for the new normal at this year's Insurance Conference 2020. He's coming from Mega Data Solutions. Basically, to talk about ICTs and how the insurance sector can tap into these very good technologies to ensure that they go about selling their goods and services. Welcome to the interview. You're talking about a very interesting and a now issue, ICTs, when it comes to the new normal. What exactly are you focusing on as you give this talk?
Mostly it has to do with what insurance companies should do to take advantage of the so-called new normal. Fine, COVID-19 has caused a lot of problems, yes, but it has also created a lot of new opportunities. And the biggest thing that COVID has done is it has accelerated the rate of development of financial products, especially those targeted at what you might call the mass market, small people, people in peri-urban areas, people in rural areas, and so forth. So all the insurance companies, whichever sector they are in, whether it's health, agriculture, and so forth, they are slowly coming on board, and the FSD is helping fund a lot of those things, developing products and so on and so forth. One of the speakers was talking about crop insurance, for example. There's livestock insurance, which is being worked on. Even the regulatory framework is changing. More and better laws are being written, that sort of thing. So I think the future is bright. So although COVID was a negative thing, but it's actually going to end up being positive because it will make insurance penetrate much faster. Than otherwise it would have been. There's this famous saying, they say that never waste a crisis in politics. So I suppose even in the ICT, this crisis shouldn't be wasted but taken advantage of. And there are even many other things, like even just cash itself, for example, carries a lot of germs and all sorts of illnesses. So one of the other things I foresee is we're moving closer to a cashless society. People less and less are going to need cash. For example, even me, I have a farm, and when paying farm workers, I pay by mobile money. There's no need to go to an ATM,
get the money,
draw, come back, then start counting money. And in fact, all my workers, farm workers who come, I actually make them even sign up on mobile money. You see, all of them now, I don't pay them by cash. So that's another opportunity, because cash, of course, carries a lot of risks, handling, risk of theft, and so forth. So as we move more to a cashless society, it will be much easier. Money will be more secure and short.
Please correct me if I'm wrong. But I get the feeling that the insurance industry has not tapped into ICTs. What do you think could be the reason? You just mentioned that, of course, there's COVID now, and it's like an eye-opener for many players in the sector. What do you think has been the reason why the sector has lagged behind when it comes to tapping into ICTs?
Okay, there are a number of factors, but I suppose one of them could also be the cost, because all these technology solutions take time and money to develop, and a lot of them are new products. So there's a lot of money spent in research and development. You have to pay software programmers, for example. You have to test them. You have to iterate through several cycles. So there are a lot of companies who prefer to sort of stay where they are, because they're trying to avoid those costs. But now, because of COVID-19 and all these other issues that have come up, it's almost like a lot of them now will be forced to go into there. So there's been that, and I suppose there are also issues of infrastructure. For example, if you're going to do all these like micro-insurance products through the cell phone companies, you need cell towers. So it means you have to go to the most remote village in Shangombo, wherever. You have to have cell phone towers there, so that when people have cell phones, they're able to access these services through the cell phone. So there's also that as well, the whole infrastructure thing, it has to be rolled out. Then also, of course, there are more software solutions that need to be developed. I did mention the cost, but also sometimes there could be a bit of inertia as well. Sometimes companies may not see the need. They think, people don't really need this sort of thing. But I think with all the changes happening, I see it speeding up, and maybe some companies will start combining together to pull resources together. I mean, let's take an example of the Zambia Electronic Clearing House. Banks came together, put money up, and they set up this thing. So those are some of the things that I think in future will happen a bit more. Maybe insurance companies could come together, invest money. So each of them puts a small bit so that they don't each have to spend a lot of money developing those software systems. So maybe sometimes it's just that people haven't yet really sat down and talked together and cooperated on such things.
There could be somebody saying, look, as a company, we're willing to go the ICT way, but the challenge is we're not sure if our audience has embraced this technology. What's your take on that?
Yes, that's actually a very valid point, because technology is one thing, you know, but there's also public awareness and public education. I mean, one of the speakers in the conference, for example, mentioned that in a lot of the surveys they did, especially in rural areas, half the people have never used the cell phone in their entire life. You know, a lot of them are not even educated. And this FSD that is now, they're even giving out cell phones to farmers, for example, in rural areas. In fact, the lady was talking about one area where they give out like 45,000 cell phones to people who had never, ever used the cell phone in their life. So there's also the learning curve, basically, for the public that also has to come into play. Okay, for urban areas, it's probably not so much of a big deal, but I mean, something in the region of 40% of people live in rural areas. So they also have to be educated. I mean, first they just have to know, how do I switch on a cell phone? How do I make a call? How do I save a number? How do I use USSD, star this, that, and whatever.
Some of them can't even read.
Yes, that's another point. There's also the education angle as well. Well, you know, all those are some of the things that have to be overcome. But I still see that in maybe 10, 15 years from now, I mean, pretty much everyone will be able to use a cell phone, and of course literacy is an issue. And in fact, cell phone technology itself could also be partly used to help with educating people, especially using smartphones. Maybe you can have apps that teach people how to do things, and smartphones are becoming cheaper. I mean, for $30 now, equivalent, you can get a smartphone, maybe less.
What would you have as the takeaway point from this interaction?
That Zambia needs to really accelerate development of ICT solutions for the so-called new normal. If you look at India, for example, the government has actually even invested money, for example, in mobile payment solutions and that sort of thing. So I think the insurance industry is one of the key players in financial sector to increase inclusion, you know, and open up other avenues. Because if, let's say you start with crop insurance, for example, or livestock, next thing you can go back to the same people and say, hey, would you like a life assurance policy? So that if you die, you know, your family can have money to continue with life, maybe educate your kids, for example. So really the insurance industry needs to help to push that wave, so to say, so that more and more products come in. Then even banking-like products can come in later. Even things like lending, the schemes, village banking, all those sorts of things. So so basically for me, I think the insurance industry is really at a very good position to help push this thing forward.
That's Mr. Chishala there, coming from the Mega Data Solutions, talking about ICT solutions for the new normal. Really has brought in a very number of solutions when it comes to ICTs, and how the insurance sector can tap into ICTs to sell their goods and services, with obviously an emphasis on the fact that it's a new normal. And guess what? ICTs are very important when it comes to life in the new normal.